When are we going to start? That would be now. Unless you guys don't want me to start, then I can just leave. No, I'm kidding. Anyway, hi everyone. I am Teamler15, and welcome to my lesson on the differences between the past simple and the past perfect. That was a freaking jump scare. Good. I intended for it to be a jump scare. No, but I'm playing. Anyway, so I technically already did this lesson before, but because I'm a dumbass, I didn't back up my video or upload it, so now we're gonna do this. We're just gonna do it again, I mean. Anyway, let us get started. Okay, so the past simple and the past perfect. I am fruity. I'm not fruity, I'm just what am I? I don't even know. But anyway, um, let's see. Okay, so the past simple and the past perfect. Okay, so how I should probably explain one thing. How do you form the past simple or the past perfect from the base form of a verb? If you remember, the base form of a verb is, well, the infinitive. Let's talk about the infinitive. So the infinitive is when you just put the word to with base form of the verb. So to walk, to run, to sing, stuff like that. So how would you form the past simple and the past perfect? Yes, right. Yes, Mr. Keck. Write those notes. Write those notes. So for the past, let's start with the past simple. How would you form the past simple? Yes, you add ed. So, oh my God, notifications. So you add ed. So to walk would simply be walked, right? To run, and that would be ran, but that's because some verbs are irregular. Most are regular, but some are irregular. And by regular, I mean that you simply add ed to the end of the verb. But some are irregular, where you just add or you just change the spelling entirely. So to run would be ran, to sing would be sang, to walk would be walked. So run and sing are regular. Like, so let me show you some examples. Regular verbs would be like, let's see, regular verbs would be like walk, dance, and if the verb ends in an e, you just add a d. So like dance for the verb to dance, you would just add a d. So it would be danced for the past simple. So walk, dance, work. So irregular verbs would be run, sing, or hit. Because with hit, you don't change the form. It stays the same throughout. So hit, hit, hit. And if you're wondering, and for some of you who are wondering why people are listing three forms of of a verb, they're just telling you what the base form is, what the past simple form is, and what the past participle form is. So there are three forms of a verb. There's the first form, the first form, sorry, second form, and the third form, and then which is also known as V1, V2, V3, or whatever. Oops. So like really, so like first form, second form, oops, third form. So it would be, so as I said before, run, ran, run would be how you would do the verb to run. And then for that's an irregular verb. Another regular verb would be hit, hit, hit. Yeah, exactly. Well, version one, I wouldn't call version one the present simple because remember you have to conjugate for person with the present simple. So I would just say that's the base form of the verb. but you get the idea. And for a regular verb um call, it would be call, called, called, right? So you get the idea. Okay, anyway. And the reason I say this is that to form the past perfect, you have to take the third form of the verb, which is the past participle. So the third form equals the past participle. Oops. And then you put the auxiliary verb had in front of it. So had run, had walked, had swum. Yeah, swum is the third form of the verb swim. Had called, etc. So that's how you would form the past perfect, right? So yes, that's how you would do it. So the first form is the regular form or the principal form or the base form, whatever. The second one is the past simple, and the third one is the past participle. Sometimes the past simple and the past participle are the same. So, and with if the verb is regular, then those two forms are the same. So V2 and V3 would be the same in regular verbs, such as I said, call, called, called. So called and called are both V2 and V3. But if the verb is irregular, well, it can be the same there too, like hits, 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 but it can also be different, like ring, rang, rung. So it depends. Like with the regular verbs, there's really no pattern. You just have to memorize them. I mean, there's a pattern in some of them, but in a lot of them there isn't. So you just have to learn it case by case. But you guys get the idea. So now you know how to form the past simple and the past perfect. Oh, I forgot to mention I'm recording this class, so and I'll like upload it to my YouTube channel, which I'll provide a link to later. Unless someone does it now, then that's fine too. But I will do it later at the end of class. But anyway, um, so now that you know how to form the past simple and the past perfect, now let's talk about the differences between the two. There are no differences. No, I'm totally kidding. Don't think like that. You will not sound native if you do. Anyway, um, there are differences, but I'm not going to actually bother explaining like any sort of rules like, oh, we use the past perfect when one action takes place before another in the past because that not only is unhelpful because the past simple can work like that, but it's also just confusing. So we're not going to do that. So instead, I will just provide examples, and you guys just like examples with the two tenses used side by side, and you can just understand the difference that way. So in other words, instead of telling you the differences between the past simple and the past perfect, I'm just going to show you the differences. But anyway, here is one example that I have typed out because I actually prepared for the lesson this time, which is rare. Anyway, let's see this. Oops, I did not mean to do that. Okay, so what's the difference between these two sentences? So, like, think about it in terms of timing. So, how do the events relate? These two events. The mother coming into the room and then you having finished your homework or you finishing your homework. How do those two relate to each other? How do those two events relate to each other? How does the first part of the sentence relate to the second? Because there's a difference here. Quite a big difference. I mean, the form is different, of course, but I want you guys to answer like how do these two how do these what do these two sentences mean? Like what's the difference between them? And they're both grammatically correct, by the way. They're both grammatically correct, but they mean different things. Okay, so I see one person has the right idea, but let me wait a bit and see if other people get it. Okay, so I see two people have the right idea. Three people, apparently. Four, actually. I should say four. So we have four answers, four good answers. Well, five, technically. So, yeah, five good answers so far. So most of you have the right idea. No, no, that the second one doesn't imply that. It doesn't imply that but the first event took place before the second. And that's the difference here. So with first sentence, I had finished my homework when my mother came into the room. That implies that you finished your homework before your mother came into the room. I finished my homework when my mother came into the room means, as some people here have already said, that both events happened at the same time. The moment your mother came into the room, you finished your homework. So the two events took place at the same time. As I said, several people got that correct. So yeah, exactly. So does that make sense? So the past perfect here pushes the event of finishing the homework further back in time. That's why people call it the past of the past, because it's basically, if you think about it, it's basically a backshifted past simple. If that makes sense. And I'll provide more examples. Don't worry. No, past of the past, not past from the past. Okay, it's clear. Okay, good. So let's do the second one, and I'll provide an example where there are actual differences between the meaning of the. Actually, no, I'm sorry. That's not what I mean to say. Well, let me focus on that later. So the past stays in the past, right? Oh, I wish. I wish. Let me actually clean this up. So let me do this example. Okay. The movie had started when we arrived. The movie started when we arrived. What's the difference? Came into the room. That the sentences should be came into the room. Came to the room is also correct, but it means something different. It implies that you didn't actually enter the room, that you just went up to the door instead. But technically, both can work there. They would just mean different things. Yeah, at the door. Yeah, I get what you mean, Alex. Don't worry. I get what you mean. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. See, you guys get it. See. I don't even have to explain this to you. You guys already understand it. Yeah. So in the first one, the movie started before the arrival of the speakers, whereas the second one means that the speakers arrived um, right when the movie started. So again, it's a matter. So the past perfect pushes an action further back in time, whereas the past simple doesn't do that. From this context, anyway. So again, the movie had started when we arrived implies that the movie started before the speaker and his friends arrived, or her friends, or their friends. I don't want to assume their gender, lest I be canceled on the internet. But anyway, the movie started when we arrived means that the movie, like, once we arrived, the movie started right there and then. Introduction to that thing, but only for the people who already know it, right? That's basically how a lot of grammar books are. They just throw concepts at you without like explaining them in context. Here's that thing that you should already know, but you don't. So I will test you on it anyway, or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, you guys get the idea. So, okay. So let me give you a few examples to make sure you really understand the difference between the past simple and the past perfect. Ooh, you speak Hungarian. Ooh, that's a cool language. It's so cool. I find the grammar fascinating because because you can make like really long words because of this process called agglutination, and it's a really fascinating process. Like you have to literally turn your mind in a different way any to make any sort of sense in that language. It's just so fascinating. But anyway, okay. So let's provide let me provide an example for you here. Simple example. So I want you to think of these examples in like the events in these examples. I want you to like picture them on a timeline. So what exactly happened? So describe the sequence of events here to me. I entered the house. Someone smashed the vase. What would the sequence of events be there? You speak Arabic. Yo, let's go. I don't know any though, and I can't read any either. But it seems like a cool language. So tell me, what is the sequence of these events? Yeah, basically. So this pair of sentences here, I entered the house. Someone smashed the vase. This could mean that both happened at the same time, or it could mean that one or that the second happened right after the first. It depends. But I meant to make it so that one happened right after the other. But you get the idea. So I entered the house and then someone smashed the vase. You guys get the idea. I think normally people would assume that one happened right after the other in this context, but technically they can happen at the same time. But to carry that implication, you probably have to like state it explicitly. So it's like someone smashed the vase when I entered the house would imply that they happened at the same time. But you get the idea. Basically, um, I guess like normally people would just assume that one happened right after the other, which is what I intended. But anyway, no, Serene, but for what I'm about to type next, that would be the right explanation. So tell me, what is the sequence of events for this one, for this example? I entered the house. Someone had smashed the vase. So what's the sequence of events here? Yeah, exactly. You guys get it. One happened right before the other. The vase was already smashed. So that's what it means. So the vase was smashed, and then someone entered the house. Yeah, it was already broken, exactly. Someone smashed a vase because she entered the house. Not quite, because would imply that one event caused the other, which is not the case here. But anyway, yeah, you guys get the idea. Okay, now here's a trick question. I forgot to mention that I wasn't going to cover two certain tenses in this lesson, but I'll just bring it up here. Yeah, if something had already happened, you'd have to use the past perfect, basically. Yes. So here's a trick question. What does this one mean? I entered the house. Someone was smashing the vase. Yeah, exactly. It's happening now. Call 911. Okay, let's not do that. We don't want to waste resources. But but yeah, exactly. You guys get it. So it was happening the moment someone entered the house. The smashing the vase, I mean. So someone was still smashing the vase when someone entered the house. So yeah. So I just wanted to throw that in there. I'm not really going to cover the past continuous or even the past perfect continuous, but but like but I just wanted to see if you guys understood this example I threw at you as a surprise. Might as well do this one as well. So what about this one? I entered the house. Someone had been smashing the vase. This one's a bit tricky, but what do you think? Is it the same as this one? Not quite. Not quite. But think of it as a combination of think of the past perfect continuous as a combination of the past perfect and the past continuous. So combine the two. The past perfect pushes the action further back, and the past continuous implies that an action in the past was still happening at a certain time. So combine those two, and you have an action that was shifted back into the past and was still happening when something else happened. So it's just pushing the action further back. It just makes the action seem more drawn out, really. Whereas the past continuous doesn't have that implication. So that's the difference. I'm sorry, I'm trying not to talk too quickly. Please explain the action again. Okay. Well, if you recall, when you have the continuous form, that implies that something's ongoing, right? That something's happening at a certain moment, or was happening, or will be happening, but we're going to focus on the past continuous. So if you combine that with the past perfect, you get the past perfect continuous, had been smashing. Someone had been smashing the vase implies that this process had been taking place for quite a while. Whereas the someone was smashing the vase, it just tells us that someone was in the middle of smashing the vase. It doesn't tell us how long they did it. It doesn't tell us they did it beforehand or were doing it beforehand. The past perfect continuous implies that they were doing it beforehand and were still doing it when you came in the house or whatever. So it's just pushing the action further back in time, but it's still implying that the action is happening as we speak. But what would happen if either tense, um, if were combined with a punctual verb like to knock? I mean, that's possible. It's possible. Someone was knocking on the door when I was in the living room. Someone had been knocking on the door well, actually, that one is kind of weird. Well, that's possible. Someone had been knocking on the door when I was in the living room. I guess it's possible, but that's weird. Um, but whatever. So you could think of the past perfect continuous as like it's like the present perfect continuous, but it takes place entirely within the past. And the reference points of time that or like whatever the event leads up to, that's what I would call it, the reference point of time. It's not in the present like in the present perfect continuous, it's at some defined time in the past for the past perfect continuous. But anyway, and if it that still doesn't make sense, don't worry about it. I wasn't even going to cover the continuous forms anyway. We're just going to focus on the simple forms. So just the past simple and the past perfect simple, or just the past perfect. I want to buy your class. You don't need to. I do everything for free here. Why? Because I love you guys. Usually, don't piss me off, and we'll be fine. Anyway, no, I'm kidding. But anyway, um, let's see. Let me go. Let me look at my outline. Oh, right. I forgot to mention. So I'm going to cover only the past simple. Let me type this out. Only the past simple indicative. Remember the indicative mood? And past perfect indicative. I'm not going to cover the subjunctive forms. We're not going to cover those. So remember, when I say past simple and past perfect, I'm talking about the indicative forms. And if you don't know what the indicative mood is, don't worry about it. You don't need to worry about it right now. Or the subjunctive mood, you don't need to worry about it. But just know, but for those of you who do know what those are, I'm only going to cover those. Anyway, Duolingo, I don't care about Duolingo. I find it a waste of time. Anyway, let's see. Oh, right. So, okay, so let's talk about I talked about situations where you can use either but the meaning changes quite a bit, right? So let's talk about situations where only one makes sense. So, oops, sorry, I'm just damn. Okay, there we go. Yeah, just the simple past and the past perfect. Okay. So now that you guys have a better sense of what the difference is between the past simple and the past perfect, here. So I'm going to give you two sentences, one with the past simple and one with the past perfect. Which sentence makes more sense? And they're both grammatically correct, but only one makes sense. So it's possible for a sentence to be grammatically correct, but logically, incorrect. So I had studied when I took the test. I studied when I took the test. Which sentence makes more sense? Okay, so we have one answer, two answers, three answers. Okay, so I forgot. Someone said bye earlier, but I was distracted. Dang. Okay, so we have a split vote here. Some people say one, some people say two. So it's technically the first one that makes more sense. Can someone explain why though? Why is it that the first one makes more sense? If you think about it, it should be obvious. Yeah, exactly. Because you have to study. Exactly, you have to study before taking the exam. You can't study at the same time as yeah. If you can't study right when you're taking an exam, you can't do that. You can't study and take a test at the same time. That doesn't make any sense. Exactly. See, you guys get it. Yeah, I mean, in a sense, if you like, cheat, you can, but no. Normally you cannot. What happened to Will? I don't know, honestly. Maybe he'll show up later. Although I thought he would show up. He's playing Fallout. I've never played that series. I know about it, of course, but I've never played it. So yeah, I had studied when I took the test. Means that you studied before taking the test. I studied when I took the test means that you studied at the same time uh, as you like that you studied and took the test at the same time. That just doesn't make any sense. I was killed when I was alive. What the heck? Actually, no, that technically can make sense. That technically does make sense if you think about it. Because you were alive and then someone killed you. So that sentence makes sense. And you can even say it the other way around. But anyway, you have more examples like this? Okay. Here's another example. I have two more examples here. So, which sentence here? Okay, which sentence here makes more sense? Wouldn't it make more sense to say I had studied before I took the test? No, actually, that would be wrong, but that would not make that technically is what I would call a tautology. I'll explain why later. It's redundant to use before with the past perfect. I will explain why later though. But thank you for reminding me because I forgot to put that in the outline. But I recommend not doing that with the past perfect because that will trigger me. That will trigger the teacher. You don't want a triggered teacher. You don't. But anyway, triggered. Exactly. Okay, so I have two sentences here. Mary had cried when her cat ran away. Mary cried when her cat ran away. Which sentence makes more sense? Let's say that Mary's cat running away. That caused her to be sad. Which one would make more sense in that regard? See, like you guys are so good at this. I don't even have to I feel like I don't even have to teach you. You guys already know this. Exactly. The second one makes sense because it implies that one event caused the other, right? But it's her fault. She let the cat go. I mean, maybe the cat was tired of her abuse. Who knows? Well, that would still be her fault. Never mind. Never mind. Anyway, but yeah, it's two. It's number two that makes more sense. Mary cried when her cat ran away. That implies that she cried at the same time as her cat ran away, or she or her cat running away caused her to cry. But the first one does not make any sense. Mary had cried when her cat ran away. I mean, it wouldn't be wrong, but that would imply that Mary's crying was caused by something else. So maybe she's just a horrible person who doesn't care about her cat. No, I'm kidding. But really, the first one implies that the crying was caused by something else, and I don't think that's what you'd want in this context. Make a happy situation. I'm sorry. I'd love to, but then that wouldn't be any fun. She can't start crying before the cat ran away. Exactly. Well, I mean, she can, but then again, as I said, like, that would imply that something else caused the crying. So, yeah. Make a sentence that includes the word skull, please. I had bashed his skull when he died. Anyway, no, I'm kidding. Now, here's another one. Here's one last example where one tense makes more sense than the other. Oops, I meant to erase that. So the people watching this recording will already know the answer. But anyway, that's okay. Okay, so which sentence makes more sense? Mary killed her dog when he ate her little brother. Mary had killed her dog when he ate her little brother. That, yeah, you can see that only the first one, the second one does not make any sense, but the first one does. So you guys get it. You're so smart. Okay, so let's do this one. When I won the lottery, I screamed. When I won the lottery, I had screamed. Sentence makes more sense. Once again, you guys have it correct because you're awesome. Only the first one makes more sense. Only the first one makes sense, I mean. Because, well, again, if you win the lottery, it's natural to scream. But with the second one, the second sentence here, when I won the lottery, I had screamed. That implies that you screamed before you won the lottery, or that you screamed for some other reason. So you're implying that these two events are no longer related, at least not in the sense that you want them to be. Because if you screamed before you won the lottery, well, I hope that it's not indicative of a psychological problem. But anyway, no, I'm kidding. But yeah, when I won the lottery, I screamed makes more sense. And actually, the funny thing is that I actually typed the second sentence when I won the lottery. I had screamed. I typed that sentence into Google Docs, and Google Docs corrected the had screamed to screamed, which just only proves my point further. But I had to ignore it because it was an example. Past perfect and past simple. But yeah, you guys get it. You made us smart. Aww, you got a heart and a fox thing. Is that a fox? I can't tell. Anyway, but yeah, you guys get the idea. So there are times where only the past perfect makes sense, and there are times where only the past simple makes sense. Okay, so let's talk about how not to use the past perfect. Actually, no. Before we do that, before we do that, let us. Okay, Mr. Boombastic, hold on to that. Hold on to that sentence that you typed earlier because I will talk about that later. That's going to go into my next point. But for now, let me focus on how not to use the past perfect. So let's talk about how not to use the past perfect like a noob. You don't want to be a noob when it comes to English. Oh, it looks like a is it corgi or corgi? I don't know how to pronounce that. But it's so cute! But anyway, I just looked at it on Google Images. Anyway, do not use the past perfect without additional context. Corgi. Okay, thank you. Some canine. Anyway, yeah, it's just some canine. At least that's what it looks like. So, yes, do not use the past perfect without additional context. Do not. So, in other words, don't use it in isolation, completely devoid of context. So, if you say something like this, she had cooked dinner, and you don't add any sort of context, people would be like, okay, and like they would expect more from the sentence because as it stands, it sounds weird by itself. She had cooked dinner. Okay, so yeah, exactly. That's exactly the reaction you'd have if you listened to a sentence like that. But if you said something like "She had cooked dinner when I got home," oh, then okay, cool. See, like, do you see how it makes more sense? Like now the lack of completion, like now the sentence feels more complete. Like the lack of completion is gone. Anyway, the lack of context or whatever. Nima, it is so much white for my eyes. That's racist. No, I'm totally kidding. Okay. Should I delete it? No, no, keep it. Keep it, keep it, keep it, keep it, keep it, keep it, keep it. No racismo. Racismo. Or I had a stroke. I have a stroke every time I have a class. That's just how I am. Anyway, another example. And people, you might hear natives say this. If you do, be free. I mean, feel free to shoot them in my place. Just feel free to shoot them because this is annoying. Just because when I hear stuff like this, it's just annoying. Feel free to like shoot them or slaughter them. What had happened was, don't say that. Just don't say it. Do not say it. It triggers me. Just don't say it. The had does not need to be there. Delete it. Like just say what happened was. But people say this. People will say what had happened was. I'm just like, why are you putting the past perfect in there? Why are you doing that? Does that need to be there? Does this need to be there? Like, does that need to be there? At least without like if like without any sort of context, that's just a waste of a word. Like just no, stop doing that. Just don't do that. Just say what happened was. Yeah, exactly. It does not sound right. Exactly. But people say this. I've heard native speakers say this, and I'm just like, do you not know how to use the past perfect? I don't think you do. Yeah, exactly. Just say what happened was. Like, if the past perfect, like, if you don't have enough context for the past perfect, don't use it. Just don't use it. Please don't use it. And don't spam it either. If you spam it, and by spam I mean if you use it repeatedly, like just willy nilly, like like just without any sort of logic, that will trigger me even more. Don't do it. Just don't do it. You will not sound native if you do that. A lot of learners do that, which is understandable. Don't do it. Please don't do it. Please do not do it. Okay. So I was about to say something else. Oh right. So normally you cannot use the past perfect in isolation. That's not to say that you can't. I should correct that. You can use it in isolation, but only if the context is implied. So it doesn't necessarily have to be stated. The context can also be implied. So let me provide an example for you. Here, hold on. Okay, so I'm almost done with this example. Hold on. Like, basically should be forbidden. Yes. But, like, it's, just like, it's just, like, yeah, it's, no, I'm totally kidding. I don't talk like that. I hope not. But anyway, hold on. Here's an example where the past perfect can be used by itself in a sentence as long as the additional context is implied. Oops. Let's see. That's not, that doesn't make any sense. Okay. Okay. So here's an example where you can use the past perfect alone in a sentence, but because there's additional context that surrounding it, it wasn't stated in the same sentence, but was implied elsewhere. It wouldn't be out of place here. The past perfect would make sense here. So person A says, "Where did you remember last seeing your wallet?" Person B says, "Well, I remember seeing it when I was in the kitchen." Person A says, "And you had just finished cooking lunch, right?" And then person B says, "Yes." So here I use the past perfect by itself, but since I had additional context, that being that someone was in the kitchen, earlier, then I don't need to state it in the same sentence as the one with the past perfect. So I could just use the past perfect by itself. Because I had that additional context, I could just use it by itself. So the context doesn't necessarily have to be stated. It can also be implied. So so you can use the past perfect in isolation as long as there's context. But if there's no context, don't use it. So to summarize, the past perfect can be used. Oh, sorry. The past perfect must be today must be used with additional context. Whether that context, oops, whether that context be stated or implied. So whether it be implicit or explicit, you need to have context. Otherwise, otherwise, don't use it because it will sound incomplete by itself. And the reason why is that the perfect aspect by nature, the perfect aspect, so the present perfect, past perfect, future perfect, all of these require some sort of connection. It requires that an event be connected with another event or another point on the timeline. They're meant to show the relationships between events. That's how the perfect aspect works. It shows the relationship between an event with another event, between an event and another event, or an event and a certain point on the timeline. It's not meant to be used out of context. That's just not how the perfect aspect works. So remember, perfect aspect by nature requires additional context. Well, technically, I should say that you can actually use the present perfect by itself, but that's really only because the additional context, that being the present time, is already implied. So technically, the present perfect requires context as well. It's just that you don't need to explicitly state it. But just remember, so the perfect aspect by nature, so that would be present, past, future, requires additional context. But you can use the present perfect by itself. You don't really have to state the context for it because the context is always implied. But with the past perfect and future perfect, you do need additional context. You can't use those by themselves. And the context for the future perfect can also be implied rather than stated. It doesn't matter. As long as there's additional context, you can use the future perfect and the past perfect. Oh, thank you, Serene. Where's Will? I don't know, honestly. I was hoping he'd show up. Okay, so let's see what else. Okay, so the past perfect. So, oops. Okay, so wait, let me take a drink from my drink, from my water bottle. A drink from my drink. If you want to ping him, you can. I don't see what the harm would be in doing it. But I don't even think is he even active? I don't see him on the, and I don't really see him in the list of teachers here. I see Nexus and Nahida, but not, and me obviously, but not Will. I don't know where he is. But isn't there a continuous state of verb combination like I'm loving it and I was being sarcastic? Okay, technically the first one isn't really grammatical in a sense, but the second one is. So I'm loving it. See, technically that's not how you use the verb to love. People do it all the time nowadays, so I guess it's fine now, but before people would just say I love it. I'm loving it. Normally we don't use the continuous aspect with stative verbs like love or want, but people do it nowadays. I've heard people say things like I was wanting to I was wanting some help over here, or I was needing some help over here, or I'm loving this. It sounds cringe to my ears. It sounds cringe, but it's normal nowadays, so yeah. Yeah, it's annoying to hear. I don't talk like that. I just don't. Well, except for I'm loving it, but that's only because of McDonald's. So blame McDonald's for that one because that's what they do. They're the ones that are the problem. They're the ones who came up with that. Blame them. But anyway, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, boycott the behemoth. I mean, some people try to do that, but have tried anyway. But ooh. Okay. Yeah, and you can and like is another one where people will say, I'm really liking this movie. And I'm just like, just say I like this movie. Well, I guess I'm liking this movie could make sense if you're still watching it, but even then it's just like, why? Just ew. Like using the continuous form like that is just weird. But anyway, um, so there are so now we talked about contexts where you should use where contexts where like you can use either, but the meaning would be different, and contexts where you can only use one. But what about contexts where you can use both, but there's really not much of a difference in meaning, and you can use them almost interchangeably? So here's an example. I'll provide it in a moment, Vic, sorry. So here's an example where you can use either, but either the past simple or the past perfect, but there's almost no difference in meaning. So you can use them almost interchangeably. Yes, I am blowing your minds. Don't worry. Okay. As soon as Marcus received his paycheck, he went to go buy a Nintendo Wii U. As soon as Marcus had received his paycheck, he went to go buy a Nintendo Wii U. Yeah, because Marcus is a dumbass, but that's beside the point. Anyway, um, because no one cares about the Wii U anymore and it's dead. But here, received and had received, they almost mean the same thing. You can actually use either the past simple or the past or the present or the past perfect here, sorry. The past simple or the past perfect here. You can actually use either here. And the difference is very slight, if it exists at all. You could actually use both. So let me correct this, because I think some people are saying, like, they're both grammatical. Both are grammatical and mean almost the same thing in this case. If you like the first one more, that's fine. I would use the first one more too. I tend not to use the past perfect when I can just use the past simple instead, which is an American thing to do, apparently. But because British English speakers use the past perfect much more frequently than we do. But yeah, you can technically use either here. I think the difference here is that the past perfect just pushes the action of receiving the paycheck further back. So it's like, but like, whereas the second one makes it sound like the receiving the paycheck and the buying the Nintendo Wii U happened around the same time. The second one, the second one kind of implies that the two events are a bit more spaced apart, but really here you can technically use either, and it would almost mean the same thing. Ghost seems superfluous. It is, but I kept it in there because honestly, I felt that I don't know for some reason I just felt the need to include it. I don't know why. You could take the verb go out of there, so you could just say he went to buy a Nintendo Wii U. But I just put go because I don't know why. Like I don't know. It just felt weird for me to leave it out. Is it colloquial? I don't think it's colloquial. It's technically standard. Like this is technically standard English, but I guess you could just take out go if you want to. It's just one of those cases where the sentence is grammatical, but you could like reduce the number of words in it. So I guess colloquial. So colloquial means informal. I think that's the closest word to it. Although, well, no, because so colloquial, like, no, I shouldn't say that. Colloquial implies non. It basically means like, how do I explain it? Because I feel like colloquial doesn't necessarily like because technically a sentence can be informal but still be standard because standard English is not necessarily formal and informal English is not necessarily non-standard. But I guess colloquial just means casual in this case. I mean, it technically is close to informal in meaning, but I'm trying not to like conflate these terms because I don't want to mislead people. Yeah, it's like it's slangy, slang, colloquial, informal, informal slang, stuff like that. So it's like yeah, everyday language. So not formal or literary. Various conversations. It's close, more like everyday language, but you get the idea. Okay, like Serene said something here. Like, I'm knowing quantum field theory. Please don't say I'm knowing quantum field theory. I'm loving quantum field theory, etc. Right? Exactly. Like, just say I know quantum field theory. I love quantum field theory. Just stop. Although, to be fair, I'm loving does make a bit more sense than the first one. I'm knowing in that case. You will never use the continuous with knowing. So you can't say I was knowing the truth. That would sound absolutely awful in English. And you'd probably be slapped. But anyway. But anyway, I think you have years of experience as a teacher. Well, teaching in general, because I've technically never been a teacher, but I'm trying to be one. Well, in math anyway. But I'm honestly wanting to. I honestly want. Oh, now I'm doing it. I honestly want to do English instead because I'm getting tired of math. It's not because I'm bad at it. It's just that I just stopped caring about it. Oh, thank you, Vic. Yeah, exactly, Alex. You would just say I knew the truth. It's the same in Spanish. Like you wouldn't say estaba sabiendo la verdad. No, you would just say sabía la verdad. That's I knew the truth. Like it's the same thing in Spanish. You don't use a continuous like that. Like if you said something like that, people would want to slap you. But anyway, let me go back because like someone had this really good sentence that I wanted to. Another example of when you can just use where you can use like either aspect no either tense yeah either tense. Sorry, I have little sleep. I've had little sleep. I mean, or I had little sleep. Sorry. Well, I mean both are correct, but since I'm American, I have to use the past simple there. Anyway, let's see. Where is that example? 'Cause, like, dang, I can't find it. Dang. Okay, hold on. Let me look. Let me look. Let me look. Let me look. Okay, wait. I think I'm getting close. Where are you? Where are you? I shall find you. There we go. I found it. Okay, next example. So someone earlier posted this. So this is technically a. So this is. Well, let me ask you this. Are both tenses fine to use here? Are both tenses fine to use here? He denied that he had taken money from the office. He denied that he took money from the office. So are both sentences, I'm sorry, both tenses here fine to use? Had taken and took, but not had took. If you ever say something like had took, I will snipe you from afar. Don't do that. When people mix up verb two and verb three forms like that for the past perfect, I just want to snipe them. But anyway, so it's cringe. Like when people say, "Oh, it's all tore up." No, it's all torn up. Learn to verb. Learn to use your verbs. God. But anyway, I'm sorry. I don't know why I keep mentioning guns. I'm not even a gun expert or even a gun enthusiast. So I don't know. Maybe I've just played too much Call of Duty. Yeah, I'm a Texan. I'm a Texan. No, really, I am a Texan. But anyway, he denied that he. Yeah, both are correct here. Correct. Yes. He denied that he took the money from the office. He denied that he had taken the money from the office. You can use either here. To me, I'd probably use the past simple because again, whenever I have like either to choose, I just prefer the past simple. That's just how I am, and that's kind of what happens in American English. Whereas British English speakers, they could go either way, but they more often use the past perfect. Sorry, but anyway, howdy, Chi man, howdy. Although to be honest, where I live, almost no one says that. Really, almost no one says that where I live. So, but anyway, yeah, taken is verb three, took is verb two. It's Texasian. Well, I've met plenty of those. Okay, let's see. Okay, one last example where you can use either, but the difference in meaning is almost negligible. Oh, you've been to Texas? Cool. Where do I live? Central Texas. Oh, you've been to Waco. Oh, cool. I I once lived in Waco. I once went to Baylor University, but only for a year. Why? Because I didn't like it there. Anyway, but yeah. But yeah, it was only for a year. I've been to Waco a few times. Usually to drive past it to like Houston or Galveston because there's an Interstate 45 that takes you like right to Houston, Galveston, but it passes through Waco. So, so I've been to Waco a few times, but only a few times. Anyway, here's an example where you can use. I've never been to Amarillo. I've been to Lubbock, but not Amarillo. So, no, I've never gone there. Let's see. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah. So here's an example where you can actually just use either, and really there would be almost no difference in meaning. Because why? Because tenses are weird like that. There are times where you could just use like multiple tenses, and there would be almost no difference in meaning. But there are times where only one choice makes sense, and there are times where you can use either, but the meaning would be very different. So here's another example where you can use either, and the difference would not matter. I almost forgot about that. I had almost forgotten about that. They're both correct, but there's almost no difference in meaning. I've heard both. I've heard people say, I almost forgot, and I've heard people say, I'd almost forgotten. You can say either here. It really does not matter. Although the past perfect, I guess if you were to describe the difference here, which is again very, very small, the past perfect just pushes the action further back. but it makes it seem a bit more drawn out, like a bit longer, I would say. But again, whereas the first one makes it sound like the event was more punctual, but really it does not matter. You can say either one. They're both correct. Why does English have tenses? Because I don't know. I don't know. I don't know why English has tenses, but Mandarin doesn't. I don't know. I mean, Mandarin has aspect, but not tense. So, yeah. Whereas English has both. But let me type the sentence here. Both are correct. So, both sentences are correct here. I almost forgot about that. I had almost forgotten about that. Well, see, with the past perfect, if you say a sentence like, I'd almost forgotten about that, technically there would already be implied context. So, really, you can use it there. There technically would already be context, if that makes sense. Yeah, tenses are quite important in English. Like, for example, with storytelling, your tense use has to be on point. It has to be correct. Because if you mess up the tenses, you technically can mess up the sequence of events in your story. Which is why it's so important to understand the difference between the past simple and the past perfect. About that, fair enough. Yeah, exactly. That's all the context you need in that sentence. Spanish has even more tenses, and just a bit. Like, well, technically, it has. Actually, no, it does. If you count the future subjunctive, which English doesn't have, it has. It has the same present and past subjunctive forms as Spanish does, but not the future subjunctive. So technically, Spanish does have an extra tense, but it also has an extra aspect, the imperfective aspect, which English does not have. Although we can express it in various ways, for example, with the past continuous, with used to, would, you get the idea. But we don't have a separate form for it. So, yeah. So, yeah, technically Spanish does have more tenses, but not by a whole lot. For those of you asking me to speak slowly, I'm trying to speak as slowly as I can, but technically, this is an advanced class. So, you should technically already have some listening experience. This class wasn't intended for beginners. If I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear enough, but yeah. I mean, I do try to slow down and speak clearly, but it's technically supposed to. This class is really intended for intermediate and advanced learners. No, you're fine. It's okay. It's okay. Could we say that I have almost forgotten about that? Yeah, I would put an X there too. I don't think so. I can't think of a context where you would say that. I don't even think a British English speaker would say it, and they tend to use the present perfect more often than we Americans do. So I would say no. I mean, unless it's something that happened very recent. No, I don't. I'm sorry. I just don't see a reason to use the present perfect there. I just don't. Am I done? Is that all? I think that's all I wanted to say. I think I've covered pretty much everything regarding the past perfect and past simple. Non-England, no. Okay, so never mind. Never mind. See, yeah, exactly. It just doesn't sound right anywhere. Like there for that context, you would use either the past simple or past perfect. The present perfect just doesn't sound right. I've almost forgotten about that. No, that sounds weird. No X. It's a big X. how to pronounce new and new. They're pronounced the same, at least to me. New and new. It's just that for the first word, the K is silent. I knew the new, but I didn't know the old. So, anyway, teacher was like, please slow it down. Slow it down. Yes. Please also give tips to remember these tenses. Uh, actually, it should be no. You know, forget it. I'm not going to bother correcting that. But anyway, because that's not important. Um, so what I would do if this lesson, I'm sure this lesson has helped a lot of you understand the differences between the past simple and past perfect. But if you're still struggling, just do a lot of reading where you can see um the tenses used in context. Help seeing tenses used in context can really help your understanding of them because then you'll be like, oh, so that's why they use it here, but not here. And this is what it would mean when I use the tense this tense here, but not this tense. So whenever you learn tenses, ask yourself the following question. What would it mean if I used this tense and not another one? Or what would it mean if I used both? Or can I use both? Or just one? I think that's all the examples I have. I don't think I have any more. I think I'm just about done. Huh. Oh, actually, no, there's one more thing I wanted to talk about. There was one more thing I wanted to talk about. Okay, so there's a bad grammar rule out there. Well, I wouldn't say bad, just not entirely helpful. Where where um where it's said that certain phrases are accompanied by the past perfect, or some phrases are used with the past perfect, such as by the time or stuff like that. So, for example, you could say, by the time the police arrived at the house, the criminal had already. Oops. Yeah, the criminal had already escaped. Yeah, that's correct. So here we have by the time, the phrase by the time being used with the past perfect. By the time the police arrived at the house, the criminal had already escaped. So by the time is often used with the past perfect, but I will not rely on just looking out for that phrase by the time. I would not be over relying on that because by the time doesn't always go with the past perfect. It can also go with the past simple or even the future perfect. So for the past simple, here's an example. By the time I got inside the house, the burglar was gone. By the time I got inside the house, the burglar was gone. So in that case, you would not use the past perfect had been because it would sound weird. By the time I got inside the house, the burglar had been gone. No, just say was. Why would you use had been there? Just no. So we want to express an ongoing event there, which would be better expressed with the past simple. So yeah, was would be better. Don't use had been there. Yeah, exactly. Well, it should be had been gone, Scrumble, but I get what you mean. Yeah, that would sound weird. By the time I got inside the house, the burglar had been gone. Ew? No, just say was. Just say was. Understandable. Vic is like, oh well, it's understandable. The criminal got away. Understandable. Have a nice day. And here's an example with the future perfect. Remember the future perfect where you have will and then have and then the verb three form, so will have done. will have worked, will have cleaned, stuff like that. So here's an example with the future perfect. By the time we return home, my wife will have already cleaned the house. By the time we return home, my wife will have already cleaned the house. So here, by the time can be used with the future perfect. So by the time isn't always accompanied by the past perfect. So be careful about that. So I would avoid relying on shortcuts like that where it's like, oh, if you see this phrase and use the past perfect. No, don't. Don't. Phrases do not phrases don't really phrases don't really gauge they shouldn't really gauge how you should use tenses. They're often used with tenses, but they shouldn't control how you use the tenses because again, those phrases can be accompanied by other tenses. So just be really careful about shortcuts like that. Instead, let the context determine what tense you should use, not phrases used in the context. Although the phrases can help, of course, but again, be careful. Yeah, it's the future perfect. And technically, in these examples, you could also replace by the time with when in these examples. So you could say, when the police arrived at the house, the criminal had already escaped. When I got inside the house, the burglar was gone. When we return home, my wife will have already cleaned the house. There would be a slight difference in meaning, but you could technically replace by the time with when there in all those examples, which basically answers Scrumble's question, I guess. By the time she realized she had cancer, it had already spread. Oof. Yeah, I would say by the time is more fitting here than when, but either technically works. But yeah, you're right, Rorschach. By the time, by the time, if you don't have this mess cleaned up by the time I get home, you're going to be in serious trouble. God forbid she get out the belts. Oh, you don't want the belts. Oh no. Exactly. Well, especially yeah, when they bend the belt and then snap it like that. Oh dear. Oh no. Oh no. I'm getting African PTSD from this. Or or hell, even a good old fashioned slap is bad enough. You don't want a Nigerian slap, trust me. You do not want one. Those those are OP. But anyway, I think that's about it. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say on the past perfect and past simple. Oh, yeah, and well, no, there's one more thing. One more thing. I was a doctor. Yeah, that's the simple past. Yeah, was is the simple past. I was a doctor. By the time I return home, my maid will have already cleaned the house. So the sentence above is okay. Yes. Okay, so what was I going to say? Okay, so there's another. I mentioned this plenty of times in my classes, but do not rely on the following rule. The past perfect is used when one action takes place before another in the past. This, as I have said many times, it's a crappy rule. It's crappy. It's crappy because the past simple can work like that. Because remember, well, for those of you who don't know, um, the past simple can also be used. to show that one action took place before another. And let me show you let me show you guys exactly what I mean. So okay, hold on. Let me start typing this example. Okay, so now these two sentences are almost they're almost the same. Well, not really exactly the same in meaning. They're slightly different, and I'll explain what I mean. But this demonstrates that technically the past simple can work like that too. Okay, let me just edit this a bit. Okay, there we go. So, oh, let me change that. It should be took, not takes. The meaning is almost the same, not exactly the same, but almost the same. But anyway, I had left the house when my wife came home. I left the house before my wife came home. So the past simple here is also used to show that one action takes place before another, right? So, so this rule, the past perfect, is used when one action takes place before another. That's not helpful because the past simple can work like that too. Because again, we have this sentence: I left the house before my wife came home. So, how does that rule help? If the past simple can work like that too, within the right context. But of course, the first one, I had left the house when my wife came home, that also shows that the past perfect is telling us that that the first event happened before the second. If you're wondering what the difference is between these two sentences, the first one just implies a stronger relationship between the two events. That's really the only difference. Sequence wise, they're very similar. Like the sequence is almost the same. It's just that the first one implies a connection between the two events, a stronger connection. Whereas the second one just doesn't really imply that. Like if you were just listing a sequence of events, like I did this and I did that, later I did this, and then afterwards I did that, without implying that they're somehow related, then you don't need to use the past perfect there. Like I wouldn't use the past perfect if I wanted to say, I went to the bank, and then I went to the store to get groceries. I mean, I could say I had gone to the bank when I had already gone to the bank when I went to the store to get groceries, but if I don't want to like show that these two events are related and I just want to like list them in a sequence, a simple sequence of events, then I would just use the past simple. I wouldn't use the past perfect unless I want to imply that those two events are strongly linked to each other, if that makes sense. So, yeah, the past simple can technically show that one action happened before another. So don't rely on the crappy rule I said earlier. Crappy, it means bad, basically. Bad, cruddy, jank, all these all these slang terms. Shitty even, terrible, awful, garbage, rubbish, trash, you get the idea. Of very bad quality. Sloppy, yeah. Yeah, you could keep going really. Yes, exactly, Serene. Thank you. I was just about to say that. Thank you. I'm glad you're here, honestly. Yeah. So here, actually let me retype my original example and then show and then put that in with the sentence you just posted because this is a very good point. Because I get triggered. I get triggered when people do this. I get triggered when people do this. If you do this, don't. Just stop. Just stop. Stop doing it, please. But anyway, okay. So you can say the following sentences, right? You can technically say any of these, and they would all be grammatical, but only the first two would actually be good. The last one just sucks. It's just bad. I had left the house when my wife came home. Okay. I left the house before my wife came home. Okay. I had left the house before my wife came home. Ew, ew, ew. God, no. God, no. Just, no. Hell no. No. Absolutely not. Don't do that. Why? Because the past perfect by nature already implies that one action happened before another in the past. So this is redundant. Like it's just like why are you putting the word before there if you already had the past perfect? And I don't mean before as an adverb. Like if it's an adverb, then you can use the past perfect. Like I had never seen that before. That's fine. But if before is a conjunction here, don't use the past perfect with it like that. Don't do it. Don't do it. It's redundant. It's redundant. It's just overkill. Don't do it. It's just too much. Like it's tautologous, really. It's like saying the following sentence, really. It's like saying the following sentence. They arrived one after the other in succession. Well, yeah, no shit. Like, in succession and one after the other are both phrases that mean the same thing. Like, why are you saying the same thing twice? Like, it's the same thing with the past perfect. Like, you're saying, I had left the house before my wife came home. Yeah, well, we already know from the past perfect that this action happened before the other event. So why are you using the word before when you can just say when or by the time instead? Like, just don't do it. I don't even think I spelled that word correctly. How do you spell tautology? Oh, see, my bad. There we go. That makes more sense. So they arrived one after the other in succession. That's tautologous. It's redundant because just say they arrived one after the other, or they arrived in succession, but not they arrived one after the other in succession. Because that's just overkill. You're just saying the same thing twice, and it's the same thing with the past perfect and the conjunction before. Just say either I had done this when something else happened, or I did this before something else happened. Don't combine the two. That's just sloppy. That's just very sloppy. But people do it all the time. You will hear natives say things like that. Don't be like them. Don't be like them. Natives tend to say redundant things, so don't be like them in that case. Like there are people that say as an added bonus, and I'm like, the word bonus means something that's added to something else, so why are you saying an added bonus? That's redundant. And there are other things like that in English. So try to avoid copying bad habits from natives. But if you end up copying their bad habits, well, at least you won't sound non-native, so there's a plus. So if you're going to develop bad habits, at least develop the ones that natives do. I'd say you shouldn't, but then again, as long as you don't sound unnatural, I guess it works. So, yeah. Is it not redundant, is the phrasal verb fall down not redundant? No, it's not redundant because, no, I wouldn't say that. Fall and fall down mean slightly different things. So, yeah, they mean slightly different things. Like, fall down implies some sort of completion, whereas whereas fall doesn't really carry that implication. You could fall, but someone could catch you. But if you fall down, that implies that no one caught you, you know? So no, fall down isn't redundant. It's an important phrasal verb actually. But I think that's all I want to say. I think this is actually the very last thing I want to say. I think I've talked about everything. How do you like what the difference is between the past simple and past perfect? Examples where you can use either, but the meaning would be different. I'm sorry, I'm speaking too quickly. Um, I covered examples where you can use either, but the meaning would be different. I've covered examples where you can only use one logically, and I've covered examples where you can use either, but there would be almost no difference in meaning. So again, just do a lot of reading and listening, and you'll get the hang of it eventually. Because if this lesson is any indication, you guys technically already understand the differences a lot. You might not fully understand them, but I can sense you guys understand them a great deal. Yeah, fall down means collapse, exactly. In a sense, because collapse can technically refer to like something just falling to pieces, whereas fall down doesn't necessarily have that implication. But yeah, they're similar, so whatever. Should I use Google Translate to improve my English sentences? No, 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 absolutely not. Do not do it. No, no, no. Just don't. No, ew, gross. Just no. No, do not use Google Translate. It is not good. It is not very good. Just don't. Like, if you need a quick translation and you have nothing else on hand, then it's fine. But if you want to use it like on a regular basis, don't do it. Don't. Just don't do it. It's ew. No, it's not good. Especially when you translate back to your original language. That's when issues really start showing up. Yeah, that's the thing. Google Translate won't help you with idioms. Honestly, if you want to use a translator, I recommend DeepL. It's better with context. Let me type it in. DeepL. I think that's how you. That one's good. It's not perfect, but it's better than Google Translate. Google Translate is just trash compared to DeepL. Yeah, I'm recording this class. Don't worry. Yeah, DeepL is just a lot more accurate. Like I feel safe using that, but I don't feel safe using Google Translate. It's so bad. I'm sorry. Like Google tried, but it's just no. It's just a big no. I tend to use Google Translate in my homework, and that English teacher could tell. Yeah, exactly. Like teachers can see right through that. Like I can tell. Like I can tell when something was. I can tell when a sentence was created by a machine translator. Really, any native speaker could tell. 'Cause it's just it'll just sound. The sentences will tend to sound clunky or unnatural. So whenever possible, don't use Google Translate. Just don't do it. If you need a quick translation, that's fine. But if you want to find a translator that you want to use regularly, I recommend DeepL, and there are probably others out there too. But DeepL is just one I like. Will you upload the class? I will provide a link to my channel in a moment. But I think that's it. I pretty much covered everything I wanted to cover. Are there any websites where that you can learn these tenses? I would really, I'm tempted to say no because they're all just bad, and they more or less fall into the traps of like. You remember that rule of thumb I said earlier that wasn't helpful for the past perfect. You know, the whole past perfect say like the whole past perfect. Past perfect is used when one action takes place before another in the past. A lot of websites fall into that trap, so I just tend not to use them. And they also fall into the trap of using the past perfect with the conjunction before. Like here, like I'm looking at one right now that says she had packed her stuff before she took the train. And I'm just like, I'm not using this website. because for whatever reason, the past perfect is very often badly explained in English classes to the point where non-native speakers just misuse it, and you could tell. And it's just like, does nobody know how to teach it? I'm not saying I'm perfect at teaching it, but like there are just things that people say in these classes, and I'm just like, no, that's not how it works. And most of these are written by native speakers, and I'm just like, yeah, you guys should not be teaching English. And again, I'm looking at another one here. So where a sentence is like, I had finished my dinner before you came home. Yeah, not another one I'm not going to use. So I'm just better off creating my own lessons, really. Rise up. Rise up is, I would say rise up is technically redundant. It technically is because you can just use rise by itself. I can't think of a context where you could just use where you would have to use rise up instead of rise. So I would say rise up is redundant, but jump up. I don't think it's redundant, but rise up is because like you could say rise to the challenge instead of rise up to the challenge. You could say um he rose to the top instead of he rose up to the top. So yeah, please share your YouTube channel. What if I don't want to? Well, then you won't get attention. But anyway, that one moment. One momente. Define redundant. So redundant means repetitive. Like basically you're saying the same thing twice. But yeah, here is my class. I mean my channel where I upload all this crap. I love to learn from you every day. Oh, that was cringe. Not as cringe as Nikocado Avocado though. That man is the epitome, the ultimate representation, the very image of cringe. But anyway, enough shade. What if you want to start a revolution? I mean, America already did that, and well, no, I'm totally kidding. Uh, there was something else I was going to say. Oh yeah, oops, I can't spell today. Yeah, so here's how you would define redundant. For those of you who don't know what that means, redundant, not or no longer needed or useful, superfluous. So like unnecessary, um, inessential, all that stuff. Excessive, you get the idea. Extra. So yeah, that's what redundant means. So if you say something like slippery water is slippery, um, yeah, we got that the first time. It's redundant. But anyway, that is it for the class. Class is over. It's over. Class dismissed. I'm not going to say that word. But anyway, if no one has any other questions, I shall stop recording. The lesson was splendid. Thanks for everything. You are most welcome. When will you come next time? I don't know. It's a mystery, even to me. No, that doesn't make any sense. But I honestly don't know. I don't know if I'll do one tomorrow. You are passionate as always. Thank you! You all get a heart. And another heart. And one more heart for good measure. You get hearts. Hearts all around. Cheers, cheerio, bye, goodbye, see you later, good day, auf Wiedersehen, cheese, nos vemos, I'm sorry, I messed that one up. Hasta mañana, or whatever. Au revoir, adios, sayonara, hasta luego. I literally forgot that one. I was like, wait, there's another one I could use, and I literally just forgot it. See, that's how I forget. My Spanish is so rusty. That's how forgetful I'm becoming with it. Gee. Yes, please subscribe to me. Oh yeah, ciao. That's another one. Can you give goodbye kisses? Mwah! It's like, oh, not like that. I'm kidding. Mwah! Goodbye, everyone. Is Serene with you? Uh, is she or he, she? I don't know. I don't think they're here anymore. No, they're not here anymore. Anyway, she. I figured, just making sense. Just checking. I mean, because I forgot, honestly. Are you a she or a he? I'm a they. Don't assume my gender. I am triggered. I'm non-binary. God, I hope I never get to say a sentence like that in real life. I felt cringe. I felt so much cringe when I said that. I'm an attack helicopter. Use my pronouns. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just being mean now. I'm gender fluid. I'm demigender, gray gender, agender. Oh my god, I'm sorry. It's just the dumbest terms. It's just the dumbest terms I've ever heard. Sir, I like the way you smile. Thank you. But anyway, I'll go ahead and stop recording.